What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Postgame Podcast. I'm your host, Cory Smith, here with Brian Geisinger. NC State, a 90-61 loss to UVA, the second straight road blowout loss, the second time NC State has lost to UVA this season in double-digit fashion. So, we would say humbling, and we would say it's kind of a gut check moment for NC State, but they've had quite a few gut checks here lately. Brian, before we really jump into things, man, just your overall thoughts on this game and what led to, NC State struggling out of the gate and never really being able to get back in this game.
Yeah, to me, we'll get into all of this in sort of more detail, but it was just like the perfect recipe for disaster for State. I think they certainly had a cold shooting performance, which did not help matters. I talked about this some after the last time we did a post-game pod when these two teams played, but I really do think Virginia is just it's a really tough matchup for State offensively. Like, they just don't have a lot of places to go, including some of the normal stuff that's so potent for them. Copeland drives, Williams post-ups, getting to the rim. Virginia just has the pieces to really make that stuff far, far, far more difficult. And obviously Virginia's defense tonight was really, really good. This was State's this was their worst offensive game of the season, perhaps unsurprisingly, but they score under 87 points per 100 possessions. That's the first time this season they failed to get above 94 points per 100 possessions, and just a total power outage from them. On pretty much every level of the floor. 31% shooting on twos, 11 of 35, 9 of 33 from beyond the arc, 27%. And again, Virginia, 12 rejections, all 12 from Grunlow, Nunyan. So they block 34% of NC State's 2-point field goal attempts in this game. So I think it was certainly some bad shooting luck. It was a matchup that I think there are a lot of advantages rolling in Virginia's way for two teams that sort of on paper match seemingly kind of stylistically, or at least in terms of maybe statistically match up pretty well. I think stylistically UVA really has some stuff going for them in this matchup. And then UVA is really good. On a night where Duke went and blew out Notre Dame on the road, Virginia dominates NC State in Charlottesville, and it just felt like the top teams in the league sort of asserting their dominance. And then the last thing I would say, if you needed one more bad thing to go State's way, for this horrible recipe, it was you have something weird happens in the second half that also doesn't go in State's favor. You have the scuffle or fight or argument, whatever you want to call it, but State comes out of that in worse shape too, right? I mean, they lose Scotty Boubet, UVA 2 free throws in the ball, a tech on Darrion Williams. I'm still not entirely sure why all of that even started, but we can get into all of that. But to me, this was just kind of the game from hell for NC State, if I'm being real.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things too where, we'll talk about the offensive side of the basketball, but it really felt like, the offense, and I know a lot of people are kind of already harping on the defense. B. Wayne here saying, another half giving up 60 points. It was actually 58 technically, so not 60, but, I know we're grasping at straws here. Yeah. But, again, to me, it felt like it was NC State's offense that was leading to UVA being able to get so many opportunities, fast break points. NC State loses that battle 24-10. It wasn't a ton of turnovers for the NC State offense. It was just bad shots, and it was just not being able to create those opportunities in the second half. And the offense was abysmal in the first half. You actually got it a little bit better in the second half, but once they started missing shots, UVA took advantage of every single opportunity in this game. Shout out to Paul McNeil. We'll talk about his performance here in just a second. We'll talk about, Darrion Williams kind of getting it going in the second half, but foul trouble in the first half combined with a poor offensive performance in the first half and, defense just letting up a ton of easy buckets in the second half in particular led to NC State losing this game overall. Before we really jump into things, though, I do want to remind our listeners, as always, visit our iTunes, Google Play Store, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere that you get your podcast. Give us a rating. Let people know that you enjoy the podcast and get the word out there to the rest of Wolfpack Nation. Also, make sure to check us out over on packpower247.com. If you're not already a premium subscriber, please make sure that you sign up, either 50% off for 1 year or 2 months for $1 when you sign up right now. Either dip your toes in or just dive fully in and get all of our analysis over the next year. So do make sure that you check that out. As spring camp actually started for NC State football today, obviously we're approaching March for NC State basketball. Despite this loss, they still will be going to the postseason. We know they'll at least be going to the ACC tournament. It seems like NCAA tournament is still very much in the picture, but still a lot of things that they need to sort out before you get to that point. And obviously baseball, a 27-0 blowout win today over Richmond. That was absolutely insane. I don't exactly know how, but NC State has scored 43 points in the last 2 games, or 43 runs in the last 3 games, and somehow or another outscoring opponents 43-2 in the last 3 games, and lost one of those. They've gone 2-1 over that stretch. It's absurd. But going back to basketball here, kind of want to jump into that. To me, the struggles in the first half were ultimately what led to NC State never really getting into this one. The first half, again, Darrion Williams, a poor shooting effort at the beginning of the game, gets it together in the second half, but Trey Holloman didn't shoot the ball particularly well in the first half. Whittier Copeland didn't shoot the ball particularly well in the first half. Vanell Lubin 0 for 4 in the first half. Matt Abel 0 for 4 in the first half. Like you get off to I think it was a 1 of 12 shooting effort to open the game. I remember looking on the scoreboard, it's at 7.7% shooting for NC State to start this game. Just like an absurdly bad start, and it's even worse. It's compounded even worse because of the fact that we heard Will Wade talk so much about how they wanted to get off to a better start. You needed to get off to a better start, and this team just absolutely did not in the first half. It led to them clawing back, got within 3 points. I think it was like 21-18 was what it was before UVA went on another 12-1 run to make it 32-19 at the half. But just your thoughts on the first half and the way things unfolded for NC State.
Yeah, I mean, there was, just to narrow, to go close and then sort of zoom out a little bit, this one exchange you're talking about, at around the 8-minute mark, State runs pick and roll with Holloman and Lubin. They're able to bend the defense just enough against UVA, which is so good at shrinking the floor and staying in their defensive shell. They kick it out, Paul McNeil 3. That brings State within 2, 15-13. On the next State possession, another McNeil 3. He misses this one. Terrence Arsenault, Moussa Sagne, Van Allen Lubin all crash. They all go towards the rim to try to get the rebound on a missed 3. And they all get caught below the free throw line. It's a long rebound for Virginia, bad floor balance for State. And on the other end, it's a wide open corner 3 for Cory White, who's one of the best shooters in the conference, if not the country. He and McNeil, obviously 2 of the sort of like better slingshots in the league. And that to me was sort of like the story of the first half, like an offense that just couldn't get right. And then the transition defense that really throughout the game was a struggle fest. Even early in the second half, Williams makes a couple of those threes coming off those high handoff zoom actions. And even on those makes, State's not getting back, and Virginia's going to hit ahead and get downhill and score at the rim, against what should be a set State defense. I want to get to the defense a little bit more in a second. But one of the reasons why this matchup, I think, is like a tough one for State is because of how UVA can match up with them defensively. When they've got a power forward like DeRitter, who's mobile, pretty good laterally, strong, 22-year-old guy with professional experience in Europe, really strong, quick, aggressive. State can't play bully ball with Darrion Williams, right? And you could even see it in when UVA played Miami the other day. UVA doubled the post a lot in that game because they were switching 1 through 4. And every time Malik Renault would try to take a switch into the post, they would double it. And I thought instead of that, like State, when they tried to post up Williams, they went right at the DeRitter matchup. UVA could guard that single coverage without, they weren't getting a Darrion a switch and then going into the post. It felt like they were just trying to go directly at DeRitter, and UVA could just, again, sort of stay in their shell. Defensively on the perimeter, to have got two guys that really jump out to me are Sam Lewis and Dalen Hall, because they offer really good positional size. And Copeland, who's been tremendous for State this season, I think he's probably been a first or second team all ACC guy, and he's beaten up a lot of, he's done good work against a lot of different types of defenders and player types, all that sort of stuff. But to me, his best stuff comes, and we saw this against UNC, when he can attack smaller guys, right? And he can bully, and he'll use his shoulder and spin moves and just spin around or power through and just overpower guys. And obviously he's not just a brute force. Like, he's a clever player who can do a lot of special things. But against, whether it's Hall or Lewis, I mean, Dalen Hall is 6'5", 6'4", 200 pounds, veteran, four-year guy. Sam Lewis, 6'7", 210, junior. And it's harder for Copeland to just go at those guys or try to do those sort of like Barkley style back down drives. It's different, you know what I mean, when it's Kyan Evans from UNC, who's 6'1", 170 pounds or whatever. I mean, like, this is that to me is one of the reasons why it's a little bit of a tougher matchup. And even if you have a smaller guard like Chance Mallory, who comes off the bench, but like, he's strong and he's like stocky.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's like, and I think Virginia would say, heck, if you want to go go out of your rhythm on offense to go at him one-on-one, like, good luck. And also just know that even if you do get by this guy, we've got one of the 10 best rim protectors in the country waiting for you, at the rim. And every time. And then whomever, again, Lewis or Hall, one of those guys is going to be on Copeland. And then the other one is going to be on McNeil. And when these two teams matched up in Raleigh, Lewis was awesome on Paul McNeil. I thought Lewis did as good of a job as anyone has this season, like chasing Paul off of all of the off-ball screening actions and movement sets that State runs for him. I thought Lewis was terrific. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think I noted this after the game, that all of the field goals Paul had in that game came when Lewis was on the bench and when he was able to go at Malik Thomas, who's he's no walk in the park either. Veteran 5-year guy, 6'5", 215. To me, Virginia's got this. They're not like super long and rangy, but they got good size positionally throughout the roster, and they're strong. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of these guys are 200 pounds to 220 pounds along the perimeter, and it's just harder for State to play bully ball all the time, knowing that they've got Grunlow and Onyenso waiting on the back end. Onyenso's number one nationally in block rate, 16%.
It felt like it tonight. It felt like he blocked 75% of the shots that came at him tonight. Yeah.
So when he's on the court, he's blocking 16% of the 2-point field goals when he's out there. He's also only committing 3 fouls per 40 minutes. That's a huge delta between those two numbers. Usually with guys who block shots like that, you're going to see, they're committing more fouls. Onyenso's been UVA has an incredible second unit. I think that's another thing that sort of swings this matchup for them. State really needs Matt Abel to propel that second unit with scoring. You know what I mean? Yeah. If they're gonna start Holloman, and I think Arsenault's found a nice groove in ACC play. And I think Moussa Sanye has been fine as a rotation guy this season. But think about what Virginia brings off the bench, man. Chance Mallory, who's one of probably the best 5 or 6 freshmen in the league, probably going to win 6th man of the year in the ACC. Jakari White, an insane shooter who could start on pretty much every team. Onyenso, who could start on a bunch of teams in the league or on other power conference teams. To have him coming off the bench is really, really good. Devin Tillis, an excellent player, really good offensive player, can really pass, can score in the post. They've got a second 5 that would be I don't know, middle of the pack ACC. You know, like it's a really, really good bench. And I just don't think State has that kind of like depth in waves. You know what I mean? They need to be able to like stagger lineups and get guys off the bench to kind of come in and help propel the starters when they sort of when they start mixing and matching lineups and getting to different combinations. And then in the pick and roll, last thing I'll say about UVA's defense, like, because I was just talking about the rim protection, like one, it's really rare that you see a team that has two guys, Grunlow and Onyenso, that are both in the top 10 nationally in block rate. I just said Onyenso 16%, Grunlow's at 12.2%, number 7 nationally, according to Ken Palm. He had 8 blocks tonight. They were, some of which were like super impressive, him covering ground, being like a backline helper, him blocking shots in the post. And when UVA guards pick and roll, they're always in drop coverage. I mean, almost always. They sometimes they hedge screens when it's on the empty side, but they're usually going to be in drop coverage. And so Grunlow and Onyenso are always going to be between the ball and the rim. And they're just not going to make it easy for you, man. Like it's like if you're Quadir Copeland, you want to get downhill and get to the rim, it's going to be tough sledding, because not only do they have good size and these two rim protectors with good instincts, they're really disciplined in their scheme, and they're going to really force you into tough shots, into tough decisions, and it's what makes them so tough. They're top 15 nationally in defensive efficiency. They're top 5 nationally in opponent 2-point percentage against them. Opponents shooting under 45% on twos, and they're top 2, or they're number 2, I should say, in team block rate, 16.6%. So again, that's why this team is good against kind of anybody, but I really do think they present a lot of tough matchups for some of the stuff that State is kind of like best at offensively. The movement sets for McNeil, bully ball with Copeland, bully ball in the post with Williams, pick and roll with Lubin. Lubin didn't get his first bucket until 5 minutes into the second half because they just got the rim closed down in the pick and roll.
He got 2 of his block shots in the first half and finished 0 for 4 because of the threat of a block every single time they went up. Yeah.
And so it's tough. And so for me coming into this game, I was like, I think State's just going to have a ridiculous jump shooting night. You know what I mean? To just maybe you do that, you soften up that drop coverage a little bit. You know, you can put some game pressure on UVA, whatever, and then State had a horrible game shooting the ball. So it's like I thought the one sort of like
in the first half from 3-point range, by the way.
Yeah, it's like the one sort of like cheat codey thing. Maybe it's like you do that and it changes everything up, and they couldn't, they just couldn't get it. So tough matchup. And again, UVA will make a lot of good offenses look bad, but I think they have some real like structural favors against State's roster and approach.
Yeah, and kind of to your point, just off the bench, I mean, just scoring alone, I don't have the numbers for blocks. I don't have the numbers for, rebounds and all the other intangibles here, all the other, statistics here. But just off the bench alone, 32-5 was the deficit in scoring. You're never going to get it done when it comes to that. And then, like I mentioned, a lot of it too was you're not only creating stops on the defensive end, they punched them in almost every single time. Fast breaks for UVA, 24-10 scoring margin against NC State. Outscore them by 14 not in transition, but off of fast breaks. Actually, NC State 10-11 in points off of turnovers. But again, when you're not getting rebounds, you're not finishing at the rim. That was a struggle again for NC State tonight. And it's funny because I was looking at it afterwards. It's like, 40-36 isn't that bad. But when you miss 48 shots and you don't get a ton of those down, for NC State, I think it was 20 offensive rebounds. So you rebounded less than half of your offensive rebounds in this game. So it's 16 offensive rebounds. So actually even worse than that. But it's just, again, like all these numbers that NC State needs to kind of improve upon. You absolutely did not see it tonight. And another factor too that I wanted to kind of point out here is you're talking so much about the size and the advantage that UVA has in this game. It's not going to get any easier when you face Duke in less than a week. Notre Dame is going to be obviously the game in between. You have to win that game on the road to kind of get yourself back in some sort of form where you can try to get inside the top 4 in the ACC. But then you're probably going to have to beat Duke, like in order to truly kind of propel yourself in that discussion. And that's going to be a similar matchup. I wanted to ask you too about the second half, the way things unfolded in this game, because we talked about it. Like NC State was better offensively in the second half, at least for a spurt there. Finished 1 of 8 in the final couple minutes there, but really felt like they got things going offensively, and then just absolutely could not stop anything that UVA threw at them, allowing 58 total points in the second half. Just again, not having the rim pressure, not having the to me, it's a lot of it is the issue for NC State is, once you get a shot off, UVA is outrunning immediately. Like they're just they're moving, and a lot of teams have seen that as a weakness for NC State. You saw it a couple times from UNC. You saw it a lot from Miami in the previous game, and a ton from Louisville. That was really where it became sort of a glaring issue was out teams being able to easily get out in transition for Louisville, and then it's kind of snowballed the last few games for NC State, despite the fact that obviously 3-point shooting helped a ton in the game against UNC. But when your 3-point shot is off and you're not getting out quick enough in transition, it really can snowball like it did tonight.
Yeah, I remember it must have been about a month ago, because it was around the Georgia Tech and Clemson games, which those couple of days, that was a Saturday loss to Tech, which is probably the worst loss of the season.
Yeah.
Or not, I mean, maybe unquestionably.
It was. It's a quad loss. 4. Yeah.
And then the win over Clemson, which, was huge at the time, is maybe not looking as plumb as it was at the moment. But I talked a lot in that stretch of days or games about transition defense with State, because I thought in the first half against Georgia Tech, it was really bad. Like Tech was just, the first 8-10 minutes of the game wasn't even having to run half-court offense, because they were just, even after makes, they were just going to race it down State's throat on the other end. And then I thought against Clemson, there were probably, 3 or 4 plays in that game, transition defense, that weren't great. But Clemson's a team that has a really good secondary break that they use to get to their high-low action. And I remember writing and talking about this. I thought State they flat out did a good job in that game defensively, like taking away some of the stuff that, that Clemson does best. But I think this has been like an issue for them all season. Just like I think the transition defense has been bad.
Yeah,
I think that has to deal with communication. I think that also has to deal with sometimes it feels like they get stuck in between pressing or not. You know what I mean? And I think teams are, 2/3, there will be 2 of the guys out on the court will be sort of like set up to press, and everyone else like isn't quite in the right spots, and the opponent is able to like hit ahead and get into these sort of like power play, opportunities, 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, snap into them. But I just don't think it's consistently, I don't think it's been like good enough for them this season. And, you watch a team like Duke, and they don't like that stuff doesn't have, you know what I mean? Like elite or Virginia, these are like, high level defenses, man, they just don't give up that stuff in transition. They take that stuff. Yes. After live ball turnovers, like you're going to get scored on, but it's the other stuff. You know what I mean? It's like making sure the floor is balanced, getting guys back, and then talking through how you want to sort of like match up as things are circulating into sort of a more half court possession. And I just don't think State's quite been as good as they needed to be in that one facet of the game this season. And then defensively, you saw tonight, they tried to switch 1 through 5. They hedged ball screens. They played some drop coverage with Lubin in the first half and early in the second half, and UVA just tore it all up. And to me, ever since Maui this season, State has been like it's a game-to-game basis for them to and some stuff has worked, and it's worked for multiple games too. So maybe not quite game-to-game, but like to me, it almost feels like week to week or once every 10 days. They've just got to like reassess what they're doing guarding the pick and roll. And then just like even against in the SMU game, which they won on the road, that first half they played drop coverage with Lubin, which like I don't even mind, and I think they were trying to avoid switching and then having their guards have to guard the big fellow from SMU in the pros. So like I get it, like I get the strategy, the numbers behind it, but to me it's like they just haven't found they haven't like settled on like the base defensively. Like we know how Virginia is going to guard pick and roll pretty much every game.
Yeah.
We know at this point in the season how Duke is going to guard pick and roll because they've really figured out their coverages with Gongba and Cam Boozer. They're actually switching less with Cam, way less since like early to mid-January. And they're playing less drop coverage with Pat Gongba, and he's usually up at the level and hedging ball screening. So, and again, those are like elite teams. State's a very good team. But to me, it's hard, I think, to be a like night in, night out, like good defense if there's a decent chance your transition defense is not going to be there. And if there's a decent chance that like a third of the way through the game, you're going to have to be like, well, screw, we have to change pick and roll coverages. You know what I mean? Like it just to me, it's hard to have a steady, stable, like high-end defense if you're having to answer those questions every other game, you know?
Well, that, and again, it feels like you're having to kind of shift the scouting report. I mean, obviously you're shifting the scouting report based off of what you're facing, but like the fact that NC State does not have, a good enough defensive 7-footer down low, or, has somebody that can actually, defend at the rim, give you rim pressure, and be able to, be somewhat of a rim runner for you too at times. You don't really have that on a consistent enough basis. So then when you're set to face teams that have the positional size, they're having to switch so much and change so much compared to what you typically do. And I think, again, that's one of those issues where, as you're moving forward, like you've got to figure out, all right, are we just going to stick with that and, just try to, try to use the same base defense on an every game basis, or, are you going to switch in and out of it? And I think as of right now, again, if you're still asking those questions, this late into the season, it's not a good look for your defense overall. And I think, again, this kind of goes back to, I think it's, at Smartphone Genius here has said, UVA has no holes in their roster while State has a big gaping hole in the front court. And that's not, again, like Vinal Lubin has been very, very good for this team. He's fought his ass off every single game.
He's been
really
awesome.
Good, really good offensively for them.
Awesome.
Obviously defensively, there's issues there as far as, being able to get blocks and things along those lines. But, and he's kind of had some down games as far as the rebounder is concerned. Tonight, another kind of example of that. Not a great rebounding game for him. Did lead NC State, but 7 rebounds in this game. And then, also saying State's really just one skilled big away from being a really good team. And I agree with that. Again, This is not a knock on Vinal Lubin. Like for NC State, your hope was to put somebody along with him. You got, initially Paul Mbia, that would not have worked out. That's not a good look. So that kind of, probably a blessing that he ended up going somewhere else. But, you kind of hoped at some point, like Moussa Sanye would become a little bit more of what we saw in the Syracuse game. A good enough defensive player, a very good rebounder for NC State at times, but the offense has not been there enough for you to be able to leave him out on the court and put him in games. Again, 0 for 2 tonight, 3 rebounds in this game, just kind of not a good enough performance from what you need off the bench to be able to give you another big and be able to kind of change some elements of this defense for the better too.
He gives them some of that. He doesn't quite have like the raw size. Like has good length and mobility and motor, and I've liked his performance this season. It's just he's sort of like just shy of the sort of like dimensions needed, you know what I mean, for that kind of like output, those kinds of like play types. And I'll say this too, like State's defense hasn't been like bad this season. I mean, there's like a top 40, top 50 defense in terms of adjusted points per possession. They're top 5 or 6 during conference play in defensive efficiency. So like that's pretty much good enough, and that's why they're a part of the reason why they're a top 25, top 30 team in terms of like adjusted efficiency margin. It's why they've won 19 games, 10 in the conference. So like it's been enough for them. And as much as I'm going to go back and watch the film and clip it and try to like find little Easter eggs and stuff like that. Like I would love to sit around and talk scheme and X's and O's all night. There is some stuff too where it's like guys do have to just like defend better. Like there was a play early in the second half.
There's too many blow-bys tonight for my liking as for the guard position too.
It's exactly what I'm about to talk about, which is that like State, there had been a few switches. It was a bit of a scrambled possession, but UVA doesn't really have anything going on the court. The ball is sort of like stuck on the right side. They swing it to DeRitter in the left slot, and it's Trey Holloman, a guard, closing out on a power forward in DeRitter. And DeRitter's obviously he's good. And like he's sort of like, a really good like modern power forward for college hoops, right? Because he can handle and shoot, and he's creative. He does and he's strong. He does all this great stuff. So like he's tough to match up with. But it wasn't like he had to like bully his way by Trey Holloman. Like he catches in his first step, like he is just around him. Mm-hmm. And it should be, it'd be one thing if it's Trey Holloman, in a cross match situation, it's him blowing by the power forward, right? It shouldn't be the power forward in the sort of like on the other end of the court that's just gliding by him, to get downhill. I think he ended up dunking it. He certainly got to finish at the rim. And so like stuff like that, I mean, maybe it feels like it's cherry picking. I don't think it's unfair because I think there's enough of it, but that one sticks out to me as just like a pretty glaringly like bad. And like, I mean, he's not the only one throughout this season. Darrion Williams has been taken off the dribble and guys have gotten around him. So like, it's not just Trey. It's, and that happened. Like everyone's going to get beat, if you play basketball, like guys are going to drive around you, but a straight line drive like that from the opposing four on a really bad closeout from Holloman is
not great.
Stuff like that's just like not, it's just not acceptable, man. It's not good enough, I don't think.
And I mean, it's one of those things too, where you can live with it if every once in a while that happens. And then your big down low gets a block and whatever, you live with those types of moments. And I think that's kind of where, Virginia is. You can play a guy like Chance Mallory, who is undersized. Again, you mentioned stocky, but if he gets blown by, it's like, but if he gets blown by at all defensively, you live with it because they've got bigs down low. And it just simply doesn't have that yet.
Elite rim protection. Again, they blocked 34.3% of State's 2-point attempts tonight. Before we hopped on this, Cory, I was looking prior to tonight. There had been only 14 games this season in which a defense blocked 34 or more percent of an opponent's 2-point field goal attempts. And I think looking at this list, only 2 of those games were like power conference teams against power conference teams. It was Nebraska did it to Minnesota about a month ago, and then Georgetown did it to Maryland like the first week of the season. All the other ones are like, it's UNC against NC Central. You know what I mean? Like it's a power conference team against a mid-major team, or it's a power conference team against like a Division 2 team. You know what I mean? Like it's Loyola Marymount versus Lincoln. That I think that says more about Virginia than it does against State. It's just the high-end rim protection. And by this point, if people only watch State games, you've seen Mallory twice this season. He's been unbelievable this year, and I think he's going to end up being all rookie team, first team, and I think he's probably the front runner for 6th man of the year in the conference too. For them to be able to pull guys like for UVA to have a guy like him off the bench, like one of the best point guards in the league, for them to have a guy like Jakari White that shoots 47% on threes off the bench, for them to have a guy in Onyenso who literally leads the country in block rate coming off the bench, and then have a guy like Devin Tillis who's basically like a 80% of Darrion Williams coming off the bench. I don't think there were a few teams in the conference that did a better job. I think like using the portal, using the international route to like build out their rosters than State and Virginia with the new coaches coming in, Ryan Odom and Will Wade. But holy smokes, I mean, UVA just crushed their roster build. I mean, they're gonna have to do it again.
Oh, yeah.
They're about to turn over a lot of the roster. I'm sure Mallory will be back. he feels like a guy that you're going to have to get used to seeing play for Virginia for a few years here. But they're loaded. They're loaded. They don't even have like a ton of prospects. Like Grunlow, DeRitter, I could see Yenso, like I could see all those guys having like interest, Mallory eventually. But this is not a team, like I don't think there's a first round draft pick on this roster. And they just are loaded with guys who are super strong, that can shoot, pass the ball, protect the rim. And man, it's a pretty awesome two-way team. I'll be at Cameron for Duke, Virginia this Saturday. I'm very excited for that game. So that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun, especially with both of them having so much size and clearly two very good defensive teams that lead to very good offense as well. My favorite quote here, the first question asked of Will Wade tonight, how do you think your team matched up with Virginia's physicality? Not very well. I think that just about sums it up. It was not very well all across the board for NC State tonight. I do need to roll. We got to get back to Raleigh tonight because I got to get my kids to school in the morning. But I did want to point out, hell of an effort in the second half from Paul McNeil. Finished with 22 points. I thought Darrion Williams was very good in the second half. If you can get those guys to transition over, finish, play really well against Notre Dame on Saturday, and then try to get that to move over somehow or another, especially three-point shooting against Duke, because that's really, to me, the only way NC State's probably going to win that game as well, given the size that Duke has in that matchup. Before we wrap out, what does NC State need to do to be able to win on Saturday against Notre Dame?
I think just do just clean up the transition defense, and honestly just play their game. Like Notre Dame, I mean, they got obliterated by Duke tonight. No Marcus Burton, no Jalen Harrelson. I mean, they're really just sort of limping to the end of the season here. Unfortunately, they just never really had a healthy enough roster this season for Micah Shrewsbury. So clean up the transition defense, close out better on shooters, and then just run their stuff offensively. They should be in line for a much better performance. And I'll keep it short, but just tip of the cap to Paul McNeil. His competitiveness and his spirit, I think, have been great this season, and I think it's translated to him being a better defender, him being good on the glass on both sides of the court.
Yeah, he's fighting his ass off for rebounds, man.
And I'm really impressed with Paul. He's had an unbelievable season, and he deserves a lot. I mean, he was clearly their best player tonight, and I think his competitiveness, I think, is something that really jumps out to me, and maybe something that could be a bridge to make Paul's already a really good player, but his work ethic and competitiveness might make him a great player one day. So tip of the cap to Paul. I was really impressed with, even if though his shot kind of wasn't going, he stuck with it, got finished in the paint a few times. And then I thought really, gave them the only spark outside of some, Darrion Williams stuff. Last thing I would say too, Copeland getting his fourth foul early in the second was bad too, because it felt like State was maybe getting a little bit of rhythm offensively, and it just sort of, they just never had the chance to get back on track. But tip of the cap to Paul. And I think coming up against Notre Dame, that's potentially a get right game for them before they head into a really, really important game in 6 days, against Duke and Raleigh.
I said that was my favorite quote. I do want to – Will was asked how much of Quadir Copeland's struggles in the first half affect what you were looking for. And he said, the way he played today, I'm not sure him being on the court much more would have helped us. I'm not going to blame it on that. So, we'll just leave it at that. Obviously, Quadir Copeland needs to have a better game. You want to see better first halves from a lot of guys in this upcoming game, the next 2 games especially, as NC State tries to wrap the season up. Again, frustrating 90-61 loss to UVA. Flush it, move on, try to get to the next one, and we'll see exactly what happens over the next couple games for NC State as they barrel towards March. Brian, I appreciate you for jumping on as always, man.
Yeah, take care, guys. Safe drive to everyone coming back from Charlottesville to NC tonight.
Yep, and I want to apologize to Chung. We couldn't make it a 2-hour podcast for you, but I hope you have safe travels as well. Thank you to everybody for listening. We will talk to you guys again soon.